Blessed love and peace. I am Professor Zuri G. Peter Johansson OCC. With Asona Ashram and Sangha Yosef, this is a recitation of Tobadi Gokadao, Torah, Bhagavad Gita, Digha Nikaya, Dhammapada, Gospels, Quran, and Tao Te Ching. It is portion numero 15. This includes from Torah, Parsha Bo, which is Shmot 11 a 13:16 from the Chandogya Upanishads. It is Kanda 2:22 from the Bhagavad Gita. It is the Purushottama Yoga numero 15 from Tao Te Ching. It is chapter 15 from Lun Yu. It is chapter 15 from the Digha Nikaya. It is the Kavada Sutta numero 11 from the Digha Nikaya, Kavada Sutta 11 from the Dhammapada, Sukhavagga numero 15 from the Gospels, Mark chapters 1 a 2, from the Quran, Surah An-Nahl numero 16, and from the Sri Guru Granth Sahib, verse 20 a 27. Bismillah ar-Rahmani ar-Rahim. Allahu Akbar. Dao ka dao, fei chong dao, ming ka ming, fei chong ming. Ja Rastafari. Deus nos te quies in cele, Santa Fakita nomentum. Vahe Guru Salam. Baruch ata Elohim, Eloheinu melech haolam, barei poryaga fin. Amen. Baruch ata Elohim, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kasanu b'mitzotav v'tzivan l'sok b'devai Torah. Amen. Kyrie eleison. Sevamastu savajagatehi. Sabe sata bhavantu sukhitata. Fagabiyam. Akwaba upendo na amani. The Kiri inesilami. Chinta dampermen. Libovmem. Womajagam. Ubuntu. Shabono. Fakitko. Sheshem. Kamosanida. Domo arigato. Peloma yelo wokan toko. Toko doko shingun. Gomenagat. God, we thank you for all that you bless us. Ata jam yata afanami. Bado. Aho. Om shanti shanti shanti. Amen. Torah, Parsha Bo, Shmot 11 a 13:16. Elohim said to Moshe, "Come to Pharaoh, for I have hardened his heart and the heart of his servants, in order that I may place these signs of mine in his midst, and in order that you tell into the ears of your son and your son's son how I made a mockery of the Egyptians, and that you tell of my signs that I placed in them, and you will know that I am Elohim." So Moshe and Aaron came to Pharaoh and said to him, "So said Elohim, the God of the Hebrews, how long will you refuse to humble yourself before me? Let my people go, and they will worship me. If you refuse to let them go, behold, mañana I'm going to bring locusts into your borders, and they will obscure the view of the earth, and no one will be able to see the earth, and they will eat the surviving remnant which remains for you from the hail, and they will eat all your trees that grow out of the field. And your houses and the houses of all your servants and the houses of all the Egyptians will be filled, which your fathers and your fathers did not see since the day they were on the earth until this day." Therewith he turned and left Pharaoh. Pharaoh's servant said to him, "How long will this one be a stumbling block to us? Let the people go, and they will worship their God. Don't you yet know that Egypt is lost?" Thereupon Moshe and Aaron were brought back to Pharaoh, and he said to them, "Go, worship Elohim your God. Who and who are going?" Moshe said, "With our youth and with our elders we will go, with our sons and with our daughters, with our flocks and with our cattle we will go, for it is a festival of Elohim to us." So he, Pharaoh, said to them, "So may Elohim be with you, just as I will let you and your children out. See that evil is before your faces. Not so. Let the men go now and worship Elohim, for that is what you request." And he chased them out from before Pharaoh. Elohim said to Moshe, "Stretch forth your hand over the land of Egypt for the locusts, and they will ascend over the land of Egypt, and they will eat all the vegetation of the earth, all that the hail has left over." So Moshe stretched forth his staff over the land of Egypt, and Elohim led an east wind in the land all that day and all that night. By the time it was Matan, the east wind had borne the locusts. The locusts ascended over the entire land of Egypt, and they alighted within all the borders of Egypt, very severe. Before them there was never such a locust plague, and after it there will never be one like it. They obscured the view of all the earth, and the earth became darkened, and they ate all the vegetation of the earth, and all the fruits of the trees, which the hail had left over, and no greenery was left in the trees or in the vegetation of the fields throughout the entire land of Egypt. Pharaoh hastened to summon Moshe and Aaron, and he said, I have sinned against Elohim your God and against you. But now forgive now my sin only this time, and entreat Elohim your God, and let Elohim remove from me just this death. So he, Moshe, left Pharaoh and entreated Elohim, and Elohim reversed a very strong west wind, and it picked up the locusts and thrust them into the sea of reeds. Now one locust remained within all the borders of Egypt. But Elohim strengthened Pharaoh's heart, and he did not let the children of Israel go out. Elohim said to Moshe, stretch forth your hand towards the heavens, and there will be darkness over the land of Egypt, and the darkness will become darker. So Moshe stretched forth his hand towards the heavens, and there was thick darkness over the entire land of Egypt for 3 days. They did not see each other, and no one rose from his place for 3 days, but for all the children of Israel there was light in their dwellings. Pharaoh summoned Moshe and said, go worship Elohim, but your flocks and your cattle shall be left. Your young children may also go with you. But Moshe said, you too shall give offerings and burnt offerings into our hands, and we will make them for Elohim our God. And also our cattle will go with us, not a single hoof will remain, for we will take from it to worship Elohim our God, and we do not know how much we will worship Elohim until we arrive there. Elohim strengthened Pharaoh's heart, and he was unwilling to let them out. Pharaoh said to him, go away from me, beware, you shall no longer see my face, for on the day that you see my face, you shall die. Thereupon Moshe said, you have spoken correctly, I shall no longer see your face. Elohim said to Moshe, I will bring one further plague upon Pharaoh and upon Egypt. Afterwards he will let you go from here. When he lets you out, he will completely drive you out of here. Please speak into the ears of the people, and let them borrow each man from his friend, and each woman from her friend, silver vessels and golden vessels. So Elohim gave the people favor in the Egyptians' eyes. Also the man, Moshe, was highly esteemed in the land of Egypt, in the eyes of Pharaoh's servants, and in the eyes of the people. Moshe said, so said Elohim, at the dividing point of the night, I will go out into the midst of Egypt, and every firstborn in the land of Egypt will die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who sits on his throne to the firstborn of the slave woman who is behind the millstones, and every firstborn animal. And there will be a great cry throughout the entire land of Egypt, such as there has never been, and such as there never shall be again. But to all the children of Israel, not one dog will wet its tongue against either man or beast, in order that you shall know that Elohim will separate between the Egyptians and between Israel. And all the servants of yours will come down to me and prostrate themselves to me, saying, go out, you and all the people who are at your feet, and afterwards I will go out. Then he, Moshe, exited from Pharaoh with burning anger. Elohim said to Moshe, Pharaoh will not heed you in order to increase my miracles in the land of Egypt. Moshe and Aaron had performed all these miracles before Pharaoh, but Elohim strengthened Pharaoh's heart, and he did not let the children of Israel go out of his land. Elohim spoke to Moshe and to Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, this month shall be to you the head of the months, to you it shall be the first of the months of the year. Speak to the entire community of Israel, saying, on the 10th of this month let each one take a lamb for each parental home, a lamb for each household. But if the household is too small for a lamb, then he and his neighbor who is nearest to his house shall take one according to the number of people. Each one according to one's ability to eat shall you be counted for the lamb. You shall have a perfect male lamb in its first year. You may take it either from the sheep or from the goats. And you shall keep it for inspection until the 14th day of this month, and the entire congregation of the community of Israel shall slaughter it in the afternoon. And they shall take some of the blood and put it on the 2 doorposts and on the lintel, on the houses in which they will eat it. And on this night they shall eat the flesh roasted over the fire, and 11 cakes with bitter herbs they shall eat it. You shall not eat it rare or boiled in water, except roasted over the fire in its head, with its legs and with its innards. And you shall not leave over any of it until Matan, and whatever is left over of it until Matan you shall burn in fire. And this is how you shall eat it, with your loins girded, your shoes on your feet, and your staff in your hand, and you shall eat it in haste. It is a Pesach offering to Elohim. I'll pass through the land of Egypt on this night, and I will smite every firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast. Upon all the deities of Egypt will I wreak judgments, I Elohim. And the blood will be for you for a sign upon the houses where you will be, and I will see the blood and skip over you, and there will be no plague to destroy you when I smite the people of the land of Egypt. And this day shall be for you as a memorial, and you shall celebrate it as a festival for Elohim. Throughout your generations you shall celebrate it as an everlasting statute. For 7 days you shall eat unleavened cakes, but on the preceding day you shall clear away all leaven from your houses. For whoever eats leaven from the first day until the 7th day, that soul shall be cut off from Israel. And on the first day there shall be a holy convocation, and on the 7th day you shall have a holy convocation. No work may be performed on them, but what is eaten may what is eaten by any soul, that alone may be performed for you. And you shall watch over the unleavened cakes, for on this very day I have taken your legions out of the land of Egypt, and you shall observe this day throughout your generations as an everlasting statute. In the first month, on the 14th day of the month in the evening, you shall eat unleavened cakes until the 21st day of the month in the evening. For 7 days leavening shall not be found in your houses, for whoever eats leavening, that soul shall be cut off from the community of Israel, both amongst the strangers and the native born of the land. You shall not eat any leavening throughout all your dwellings. You shall eat unleavened cakes. Moshe summoned all the elders of Israel and said to them, draw forth or buy for yourselves sheep for your families, and slaughter the Pesach offering. And you shall take a bunch of hyssop and immerse it in the blood that is in the basin, and you shall extend it to the lintel and to the two doorposts, the blood that is in the basin, and you shall not go out, any man from the entrance of his house until Matan. Elohim will pass to smite the Egyptians, and Elohim will see the blood on the lintel and on the two doorposts, and Elohim will pass over the entrance, and Elohim will not permit the destroyer to enter your houses to smite you. And you shall keep this matter as a statute for you and for your children forever. And it shall come to pass when you enter the land that Elohim will give you, as Elohim spoke, that you shall observe this service. And it will come to pass, if your children say to you, what is this service to you? You shall say, it is a Pesach offering to Elohim, for Elohim passed over the houses of the children of Israel in Egypt when Elohim smote the Egyptians, and Elohim saved our houses. And the people kneeled and prostrated themselves. So the children of Israel went and did as Elohim commanded Moshe and Aaron, so they did. It came to pass at midnight, and Elohim smote every firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who sits on his throne to the firstborn of the captive who is in the dungeon, and every firstborn animal. And Pharaoh arose at night, he and all his servants, and all the Egyptians, and there was a great outcry in Egypt, for there was no house in which no one was dead. So he called for Moshe and Aaron at night, and he said, get up and get out from amongst my people, both you as well as the children of Israel, and go worship Elohim as you have spoken. Take also your flocks and also your cattle as you have spoken, and go, but you shall also bless me. So the Egyptians took hold of the people to hasten to send them out of the land, for they said, we are all dead. The people picked up their dough when it was not yet leavened, their leftovers bound in their garments on their shoulders. And the children of Israel did according to Moshe's order, and they borrowed from the Egyptians silver objects, golden objects, and garments. Elohim gave the people favor in the eyes of the Egyptians, and they lent them, and they emptied out Egypt. The children of Israel journeyed from Ramses to Sukkot, about 600,000 on foot, the men besides the young children. And also a great mixed multitude went up with them, and flocks and cattle, very much livestock. They baked the dough that they had taken out of Egypt as unleavened cakes, for it had not leavened, for they were driven out of Egypt, and they could not tarry, and also they had not made provisions for themselves. And the habitation of the children of Israel that they dwelled in Egypt was 430 years. It came to pass at the end of 430 years, and it came to pass in that very day, that all the legions of Elohim went out of the land of Egypt. It is a night of anticipation for Elohim to take them out of the land of Egypt. This night is Elohim's, guarding all the children of Israel throughout their generations. Elohim said to Moshe and Aaron, this is the statute of the Pesach offering. No estranged one may partake of it, and every man's slave purchased for his money, you shall circumcise him, and he will be permitted to partake of it. A sojourner or a hired hand may not partake of it. It must be eaten in one house. You shall not take any of it, the meat out of the house to the outside, neither shall you break any of its bones. The entire community of Israel shall make it, and should a proselyte reside with you, he shall make a Pesach offering to Elohim. All his males shall be circumcised, and then he may approach to make it, and he will be like the native of the land, but no uncircumcised male may partake of it. There shall be one law for the native and for the stranger who resides in your midst. All the children of Israel did as Elohim had commanded Moshe and Aaron, so they did. It came to pass on that very day that Elohim took the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt with their legions. Elohim spoke to Moshe, saying, sanctify to me every firstborn, every one that opens the womb amongst the children of Israel, amongst man and amongst animals, it is mine. Moshe said to the people, remember this day when you went out of Egypt, out of the house of bondage, for with a mighty hand Elohim took you out of here, and therefore no leaven shall be eaten. Today you are going out in the month of spring, and it will come to pass that Elohim will bring you into the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, which Elohim swore to your forefathers to give you a land flowing with milk and honey, and you shall perform this service in this month. For 7 days you shall eat unleavened cakes, and on the seventh day there is a festival for Elohim. Unleavened cakes shall be eaten during the 7 days, and no leaven shall be seen of yours in your possession, and no leavening shall be seen of yours throughout all of your borders. And you shall tell your son on that day, saying, because of this Elohim did this for me when I went out of Egypt. And it shall be to you as a sign upon your hand and as a remembrance between your eyes, in order that the law of Elohim shall be in your mouth. For with a mighty hand Elohim took you out of Egypt. And you shall keep the statute at its appointed time from year to year. And it will come to pass, when Elohim will bring you into the land of the Canaanites, as Elohim swore to you and to your forefathers, and Elohim has given it to you, that you shall give over to Elohim whatever opens the womb, and every miscarriage that opens the womb of an animal which will be yours, the males belong to Elohim. And every firstborn donkey you shall redeem it with a lamb, and if you do not redeem it, you shall decapitate it. And every firstborn of man amongst your sons you shall redeem. And it will come to pass, if your son asks you in the future, saying, What is this? You shall say to them, With a mighty hand did Elohim take us out of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. And it came to pass, when Pharaoh was too stubborn to let us out, Elohim slew every firstborn in the land of Egypt, both the firstborn of men and the firstborn of beast. Therefore I slaughter for an offering all males that open the womb, and every firstborn of my sons I will redeem. And it shall be for a sign upon your hand and for ornaments between your eyes, for with a mighty hand did Elohim take us out of Egypt. Chandogya Upanishads Kanda 2, número 2. Kando 2, número 22. And Udgatri priest thinks thus: I choose the deep-sounding note of the Saman, which is beneficial for the cattle and which belongs to fire, Agni. The undefined note belongs to Prajapati, the defined note to Soma, the moon, the soft and smooth note to Vayu, the air, the smooth and strong note to Indra, the heron-like note to Brihaspati, and the dull note to Varuna. Let a man cultivate all these, avoiding, however, the note of Varuna. A man should sing, wishing that by his song he may secure eternal life for the celestials. May I obtain by my song oblations, svada for the manes of Brahman, hope for men, grass and water for cattle, heaven for the offerer, and food for myself. Thus reflecting all these in his mind, he, the Agatri priest, should chant the honors without making mistakes in pronunciation. All vowels belong to the different parts of Indra's, the celestial Indra's body. All vowels belong to the different parts of the body of the celestial Indra of Brahman. All sibilants to the celestial Prajapati of Brahman. All consonants to the celestial Mritu of Brahman, death. If someone should reprove him, the Agatri priest, who knows this, regarding the pronunciation of vowels, let him say, I went to the celestial Indra of Brahman for my refuge when pronouncing my vowels. The celestial Indra of Brahman will answer you. And if someone should reprove him for his sibilants, let him say, I went to the celestial Prajapati of Brahman for my refuge. The celestial Prajapati of Brahman will smash you. And if someone should reprove him for his consonants, let him say, I went to the celestial Mritu of Brahman for my refuge. The celestial Mritu of Brahman will burn you to ashes. All vowels should be pronounced with resonance and strength, and with the thought on the part of the singer, may I impart strength to the celestial Indra of Brahman, the prana. All the sibilants should be pronounced full without being swallowed or thrown out, and with the thought, may I give myself to the celestial Prajapati of Brahman. All consonants should be pronounced slowly and without mixing them with the others, and with the thought, may I withdraw myself from death. Bhagavad Gita, the Purushottama Yogahe 15. Sri Krishna says, they speak of an imperishable Ashvata tree with its root above and its branches below. Its leaves are the Vedas, and he who knows it knows the Vedas. Above and below spread its branches, nourished by the gunas. Sense objects are its buds, and its clustering roots spread downwards in the world of men, giving rise to action. Its true form is not comprehended here, nor its end, nor its origin, nor even its existence. Having cut down this firm-rooted Ashvata with the strong acts of detachment, one should pray, I take refuge in that primal being from whom has streamed forth this eternal activity, and seek that goal from which they who have reached it never return. Free from pride and delusion, having conquered the evil of attachment, ever devoted to the Supreme Self, with desires completely stilled, liberated from the pairs of opposites known as pleasure and pain, the undiluted reach that immutable goal. It, the soleil, illumines not, nor the moon, nor fire. It is my supreme abode, and they who reach it never return. An eternal portion of myself, having become a living soul in a world of living beings, draws it to itself the five senses, with the mind for the sixth, which abide in Prakriti. When the living spirit acquires a body, and when the living spirit leaves it, the living spirit takes these with the living spirit, and goes on the living spirit's way, as the wind carries away the scents from their places. Presiding over the ear and the eye, the organs of touch, taste, and smell, and also over the mind, the living spirit experiences sense objects. The deluded do not perceive the living spirit when the living spirit departs from the body or dwells in it, when the living spirit experiences objects or is united with the gunas, but they who have the eye of wisdom perceive the living spirit. Those who strive armed with yoga behold the living spirit dwelling within themselves, but the undisciplined and the thoughtless do not perceive the living spirit, though they strive. The light that is in the soleil and illumines the whole universe, the light that is in the moon and is likewise in fire, know that light to be mine. Entering the earth, I sustain all beings by my energy, and becoming the sabid moon, I nourish all herbs. As the fire Vashvanara, I enter into the bodies of all living creatures, and mingling with the upwards and downwards breath, I digest the four kinds of food. And I am seated in the hearts of all. From me are memory and knowledge, and their loss as well. It is I alone who am to be known through all the Vedas. I am indeed the author of Vedanta and the knower of the Vedas. There are two beings in the world, the perishable and the imperishable. The perishable comprises all creatures, and the imperishable is said to be the unchanging. But there is another being, the highest, called the Supreme Self, who, as the immutable, pervades and sustains the three worlds. As I surpass the perishable, and as I am higher even than the imperishable, I am extolled in the world and in the Vedas as the Supreme Self. He who undiluted knows me thus as the Supreme Self, he knows all, O Bharata, and he worships me with all his heart. Thus, O sinless one, has this most profound teaching been imparted by me. By knowing it, a man becomes wise, O Bharata, and fulfills all his duties. Tao Te Ching, Chapter 15. The Tao Masters of Antiquity. Subtle wonders through mystery. Depths that cannot be discerned. Because one cannot discern them, therefore one is forced to describe the appearance. Hesitant, like crossing a wintry river. Cautious, like fearing four neighbors. Solemn, like a guest. Loose, like ice about to melt. Genuine, like plain wood. Open, like a valley. Opaque, like muddy water. Who can be muddled, yet desist? In stillness gradually become clear. Who can be serene, yet persist? In motion gradually come alive. One who holds this Tao does not wish to be overfilled. Because one is not overfilled, therefore one can preserve and not create anew. From Lun Yu, Chapter 15. Duke Ling of Wei asks Confuzi about military formations. Confuzi answers, I have indeed heard something about the utilization of offertory vessels, but I have never studied the matter of commanding troops. The next day he departed. In Chen, when provisions ran out, the followers had become so weak that none of them could rise to their feet. Tsulu, with resentment written all over his face, says, Are there times when even gentlemen are brought to such extreme straits? The master says, It comes as no surprise to the gentleman to find himself in extreme straits. The small man finding himself in extreme straits would throw over all restraint. The master says, Su, do you think that I am the kind of man who learns widely and retains what he has learned in his mind? Yes, I do. Is it not so? No, I have a single thread binding it all together. The master says, You, rare are those who understand virtue. The master says, If there was a ruler who achieved order without taking any action, it was perhaps Shun. There was nothing for him to do but to hold himself in a respectful posture and to face due south. Tzu Chong asks about going forward without obstruction. The master says, If in word you are conscientious and trustworthy, and indeed single-minded and reverent, then even in the lands of the barbarians you will go forward without obstruction. But if you fail to be conscientious and trustworthy in word, or to be single-minded and reverent in deed, then can you be sure of going forward without obstruction, even in your own neighborhood? When you stand, you should have this ideal there in front of you, and when you're in your carriage, you should see it leaning against the handlebar. Only then are you to be sure. Only then are you sure to go forward without obstruction. Tzu Cheng wrote this on his sash. The master says, how straight Shi Yu is. When the way prevails in the state, he is as straight as an arrow, yet when the way falls into disutilization in the state, he is still as straight as an arrow. How genuinely Chu Po Yu is. When the way prevails in the state, he takes office, but when the way falls into disutilization in the state, he allows himself to be furled and put away safely. The master says, to fail to speak to a man who is capable of benefiting is to let a man go to waste. To speak to a man who is incapable of benefiting is to let one's words go to waste. A wise man lets neither men nor words go to waste. The master says, for gentlemen of purpose and men of benevolence, whilst it is inconceivable that they should seek to stay alive at the expense of benevolence, it may happen that they have to accept death in order to have benevolence accomplished. Tzu Kung asks about the practice of benevolence. The master says, a craftsman who wishes to practice his craft well must first sharpen his tools. You should therefore seek the patronage of the most distinguished counselors and make friends with the most benevolent gentlemen in the state where you happen to be staying. Yen Yuan asks about the government of a state. The master says, follow the calendar of Tsa, ride in the carriage of the Yin, and wear the ceremonial cap of the Chao. But as for music, adopt the Shao and the Wu. Banish the tunes of Cheng and keep plausible men at a distance. The tunes of Cheng are wanton and plausible men are dangerous. The master says, he who gives no thought to difficulties in the future is sure to be beset by worries much closer at hand. The master says, I suppose I should give up hope. I have yet to meet the man who is as fond of virtue as he is of beauty in women. The master says, has Cong Wen Chung not occupied a position he is not entitled to? He knew the excellence of Lu Ca Hui, and yet would not yield to him his position. The master says, if one sets strict standards for oneself and makes allowances for others when making demands on them, one will stay clear of ill will. The master says, there is nothing I can do with a man who is not constantly saying, what am I to do? What am I to do? The master says, it is quite a remarkable feat for a group of men who are together all day long, merely to indulge themselves in acts of petty cleverness, without ever touching on the subject of virtue in their conversation. The master says, the gentleman has virtue as his basic stuff, and by observing the rites puts it into practice, by being modest gives it expression, and by being trustworthy in word brings it to completion. Such is a gentleman indeed. The master says, the gentleman is troubled by his own lack of ability, not by the failure of others to appreciate him. The master says, the gentleman hates not leaving behind a name when he is gone. The master says, what the gentleman seeks, he seeks within himself. What the small man seeks, he seeks in others. The master says, the gentleman is conscious of his own superiority without being conscient. The gentleman is conscious of his own superiority without being contentious, and comes together with other gentlemen without forming cliques. The master says, the gentleman does not recommend a man on account of what he says, neither does he dismiss what is said on account of the speaker. Tzu Kung asks, is there a single word which can be a guide to conduct? Is there a single word which can be a guide to conduct throughout one's life? The master says, it is perhaps the word shu. Do not impose on others what you yourself do not desire. The master says, whom have I ever praised, honored, or condemned? If there is anyone I honored, you may be sure that he had been put to the test. These common people are the touchstone by which the three dynasties were kept to the straight path. The master says, I am old enough to have seen scribes who lacked refinement. Those who had horses would permit others to drive them. Nowadays there are, I suppose, no longer such cases. The master says, out for words will ruin one's virtue. The lack of self-restraint in small matters will bring ruin to great plans. The master says, be sure to go carefully into the case of the man who is disliked by the multitude. Be sure to go carefully into the case of the man who is liked by the multitude. The master says, it is man who is capable of broadening the way. It is not the way that is capable of broadening man. The master says, not to mend one's ways when one has erred is to err indeed. The master says, I once spent all day thinking without taking food and all night thinking without going to bed, but I found that I gained nothing therefrom. It would have been better for me to have spent the time in learning. The master says, the gentleman devotes his mind to attaining the way and not to securing food. Go and till the land, and you will end up by being hungry. As a matter of course, study, and you will go and till the land, and you will end up by being hungry as a matter of course. Study, and you will end up with the salary of an official as a matter of course. The gentleman worries about the way, not about poverty. The master says, what is within the reach of a man's understanding, but beyond the power of his benevolence to keep, is something he will lose even if he acquires it. A man may be wise enough to attain it and benevolent enough to keep it, but if he does not rule over them with dignity, then the common people will not be reverent. A man may be wise enough to attain it, benevolent enough to keep it, and may govern the people with dignity, but if he does not set them to work in accordance with the rights, he is still short of perfection. The master says, the gentleman cannot be appreciated in small things, but is acceptable in great matters. A small man is not acceptable in great matters, but can be appreciated in small things. The master says, benevolence is further vital to the common people than even fire and water. In the case of fire and water, I have seen men die by stepping on them, but I have never seen any man die by stepping on benevolence. The master says, when faced with the opportunity to practice benevolence, do not give precedence even to your teacher. The master says, the gentleman is devoted to principle, but not inflexible in small matters. The master says, in serving one's master, one should approach one's duties with reverence and consider one's pay as of secondary importance. The master says, in instruction, there is no separation into categories. The master says, there is no point in people taking counsel together who follow different ways. The master says, it is enough that the language one utilizes gets the point across. Mien, the master musician, calls. When he comes to the steps, the master says, you have reached the steps. And when he came to the mat, the master says, you have reached the mat. When everyone was seated, the master tells him, this is so-and-so here, and that is so-and-so over there. After the master musician had gone, Tsukung asks, is that the way to talk to a musician? The master says, yes, that is the way to assist a musician. Digha Nikaya, Kevada Sutta numero 11. Thus have I heard. Once the Exalted One was staying at Nalanda in the Pavarika mango grove. In Pavarika's mango grove. At that time, Kevada, a young householder, approached the Exalted One, paid homage to him, and sat down to one side. Seated, he said to the Exalted One, Venerable Sir, this Nalanda of ours is influential and prosperous, populous, crowded with people devoted to the Exalted One. It would be well if the Exalted One were to have some monk perform a miracle by the power surpassing that of ordinary men. Then would this Nalanda of ours become even so much further devoted to the Exalted One. In reply, the Exalted One said to him, But Kevada, this is not how I give instruction to the monks. Come now, monks, perform a miracle by the power surpassing that of ordinary men, for the layfolk clad in their garments of white. And a second time Kevada made the same request to the Exalted One, and received a second time the same reply. And a third time Kevada, the young householder, addressed the Exalted One and said, I do not wish to be importunate to the Exalted One. I only say that this Nalanda of ours is influential and prosperous, populous, crowded with people devoted to the Exalted One. It would be well if the Exalted One were to have some monk perform a miracle by the power surpassing that of ordinary men. Then this Nalanda of ours would become even so much further devoted to the Exalted One. Kevada, there are these three sorts of miracles which I have made known to others, having myself understood and recognized them, actualized them. And what are the three? The miracle of psychic power, the miracle of telepathy, and the miracle of instruction. And what, Kevada, is the miracle of psychic power? Here, Kevada, a monk wields the various psychic powers. Having been one, he becomes many, and having been many, he becomes one. He appears and vanishes. He goes unimpeded through walls, ramparts, and mountains as if through space. He dives in and out of the earth as if it were water. He walks on water without sinking as if it were earth. Sitting cross-legged, he travels through space like a winged bird. With his hand, he touches and strokes the soleil and the moon, so mighty and powerful. He exercises mastery over the body as distant as the Brahma world. Then someone who has faith and trust sees him doing these things. He then tells this to an unbeliever, saying, Wonderful and marvelous, sir, is the psychic power and potency of that recluse, for truly I saw him exercising that psychic power in various ways. Having been one, he becomes many, and having been many, he becomes one. He appears and vanishes. He goes unimpeded through walls, ramparts, and mountains as if through space. He dives in and out of the earth as if it were water. He walks on water without sinking as if it were earth. Sitting cross-legged, he travels through space like a winged bird. With his hand, he touches and strokes the soleil and moon, so mighty and powerful. He exercises mastery over the body as distant as the Brahma world. Then that unbeliever might say to him, "Well, sir, there is a certain charm called the Gandhara charm. It is by means of this charm that he performs all this." Now what think you, Kavada? Might not an unbeliever so say? Yes, sir, he might. Well, Kavada, it is because of this, seeing the danger of such miracles, I dislike, reject, and despise them. And what, Kavada, is the miracle of telepathy? Here, a monk reads the minds of other beings, and of other people, reads their mental states, their thoughts, and ponderings, and says, "That is how your mind is, that is how it inclines, that is in your heart." Then someone who has faith and trust sees him doing these things. He then tells this to an unbeliever, saying, "Wonderful and marvelous, sir, is the telepathic power and potency of that recluse. For truly I saw him reading the minds of other beings, of other people, reading their mental states, their thoughts and ponderings, and saying, 'That is how your mind is, that is how it inclines, that is in your heart.' Then that unbeliever should say to him, 'Well, sir, there is a certain charm called the Manika charm. It is by means of this charm that he performs all this.' Now what think you, Kavada? Might not an unbeliever so say? Yes, sir, he might. Well, Kavada, it is because of this, seeing the danger of such miracles, I dislike, reject, and despise them. And what, Kavada, is the miracle of instruction? Here, Kavada, a monk teaches in this way. Reason in this way, do not reason in that way. Consider this and not that. Get rid of this disposition, train yourself, and remain in that. This, Kavada, is what is called the miracle of instruction. Further, Kavada, a Tathagata arises in the world, a worthy one, perfectly enlightened, endowed with clear knowledge and conduct, accomplished, a knower of the world, unsurpassed trainer of men to be tamed, teacher of devas and men, enlightened and exalted. Having recognized by his own direct knowledge this world with its devas, its maras, and its brahmas, this generation with its recluses and brahmins, its rulers and people, he makes it known to others. He teaches the Dhamma that is benevolent in the beginning, benevolent in the middle, and benevolent in the end. Possessing meaning and phrasing, he reveals the holy life that is fully complete and purified. A householder or a householder's son or one born into some other family hears the Dhamma. Having heard the Dhamma, he gains faith in the Tathagata. Endowed with such faith, he reflects, the household life is crowded, a path of dust, going forth is like the open air. It is not easy for one dwelling at home to lead the perfectly complete, perfectly purified holy life, bright as a polished conch. Let me then shave off my hair and beard, put on saffron robes, and go forth from home to homelessness. After some time he abandons his accumulation of wealth, be it large or small. He abandons his circle of relatives, be it large or small. He shaves off his hair and beard, puts on saffron robes, and goes forth from home to homelessness. When he has thus gone forth, he lives restrained by the restraint of the patimoksha, possessed of proper behavior and resort. Having taken up the rules of training, he trains himself in them, seeing danger in the slightest faults. He comes to be endowed with wholesome bodily and verbal action. His livelihood is purified, and he is possessed of virtuous discipline. He guards the doors of his sense faculties, is endowed with mindfulness and clear comprehension, and is content. And how, Kavada, is the monk possessed of virtuous discipline? Here in Kavada, having abandoned the destruction of life, the monk abstains from the destruction of life. He has laid down the rod and the weapon, and dwells conscientious, full of kindness, sympathetic for the well-being of all living beings. This pertains to his virtuous discipline. Having abandoned taking what is not given, he abstains from taking what is not given. Accepting and expecting only what is given, he lives in honesty with a pure mind. This too pertains to his virtuous discipline. Having abandoned in celibacy, he leads the holy life of celibacy. He dwells aloof and abstains from the Having abandoned celibacy, he leads the holy life of celibacy. He dwells aloof and abstains from the vulgar practice of sexual intercourse. This too pertains to his virtuous discipline. Having abandoned false speech, he abstains from falsehood. He speaks only the truth. He lives devoted to truth, trustworthy and reliable. He does not deceive anyone in the world. This too pertains to his virtuous discipline. Having abandoned slander, he abstains from slander. He does not repeat elsewhere what he has heard here in order to divide others from the people here, nor does he repeat here what he has heard elsewhere in order to divide these from the people there. Thus he is a reconciler of those who are divided and a promoter of friendships. Rejoicing, delighting, and exulting in concord, he speaks only words that are conducive to concord. This too pertains to his virtuous discipline. Having abandoned harsh speech, he abstains from harsh speech. He speaks only such words as are gentle, pleasing to the ear, endearing, going to the heart, polite, amiable, and agreeable to the many folk. This too pertains to his virtuous discipline. Having abandoned idle chatter, he abstains from idle chatter. He speaks at the right time, speaks what is factual and beneficial. He speaks on the Dharma and the discipline. His words are worth treasuring. They are timely, backed by reasons, measured and connected with the benevolent. This too pertains to his virtuous discipline. He abstains from damaging seed and plant life. He eats only in one part of the day, refraining from food at night and from eating at improper times. He abstains from dancing, singing, instrumental music, and from witnessing unsuitable shows. He abstains from wearing garlands, embellishing himself with scents, and beautifying himself with unguents. He abstains from high and luxurious beds and seats. He abstains from accepting gold and silver. He abstains from accepting uncooked grain, raw meat, women and girls, male and female slaves, goats and sheep, fowl and swine, elephants, cattle, horses, and mares. He abstains from accepting fields and lands. He abstains from running messages and errands. He abstains from buying and selling. He abstains from dealing with false weights, false metals, and false measures. He abstains from the crooked ways of bribery, deception, and fraud. He abstains from mutilating, executing, imprisoning, robbery, plunder, and violence. This too pertains to his virtuous discipline. Whereas some recluses and Brahmins, whilst living on the food offered by the faithful, continually cause damage to seed and plant life, to plants propagated from roots, stems, joints, buds, and seeds, he abstains from damaging seed and plant life. This too pertains to his virtuous discipline. Whereas some recluses and Brahmins, whilst living on food offered by the faithful, enjoy the utilization of stored up treasures, such as stored up food, drinks, garments, vehicles, bedding, scents, and comestibles, he abstains from the utilization of stored up treasures. This too pertains to his virtuous discipline. Whereas some recluses and Brahmins, whilst living on the food offered by the faithful, attend unsuitable shows, such as shows featuring dancing, singing, or instrumental music, theatrical performances, narrations of legends, music played by hand clapping, cymbals and drums, picture houses, acrobatic performances, combats of elephants, horses, buffaloes, bulls, goats, rams, cocks, and quails, stick fights, boxing and wrestling, sham fights, roll calls, battle arrays, and regimental reviews. He abstains from attending such unsuitable shows. This too pertains to his virtuous discipline. Whereas some recluses and Brahmins, whilst living on food offered by the faithful, indulge in the following games and recreations: Atapata, Dasapata, Akasha, Pariharapata, Santika, Kalika, Gatika, Salakahata, Aksha, Pangachira, Pangaka, Mokshachika, Chingolika, Patalaka, Brataka, Danuka, Aksharika, Manasika, Yatavaja. He abstains from such games that are a basis for negligence. This too pertains to his virtuous discipline. Whereas some recluses and Brahmins, whilst living on the food offered by the faithful, enjoy the utilization of high and luxurious beds and seats, such as spacious couches, thrones with animal figures carved on the supports, long-haired coverlets, multicolored patchwork coverlets, white woolen coverlets embroidered with flowers, quilts stuffed with cotton, woolen coverlets embroidered with animal figures, woolen coverlets with hair on both sides or on one side, bedspreads embroidered with gems, silk coverlets, dance hall carpets, elephant, horse, or chariot rugs, rugs of antelope skins, choice spreads made of Kadali deer hides, spreads with red awnings overhead, couches with red cushions for head and feet. He abstains from the utilization of such high and luxurious beds and seats. This too pertains to his virtuous discipline. Whereas some recluses and Brahmins, whilst living on food offered by the faithful, enjoy the utilization of such devices for embellishing and beautifying themselves as the following: rubbing scented powders into the body, massaging with oils, bathing in perfumed water, kneading the limbs, mirrors, ointments, garlands, scents, unguents, face powders, makeup, bracelets, headbands, decorated walking sticks, ornamented medicine tubes, rapiers, soleil shades, embroidered sandals, turbans, diadems, yak-tail whisks, and long-fringed white robes. He abstains from the utilization of such devices for embellishment and beautification. This too pertains to his virtuous discipline. Whereas some recluses and Brahmins, whilst living on the food offered by the faithful, engage in frivolous chatter, such as talk about kings, thieves, and ministers of state, talk about armies, dangers, and wars, talk about food, drinks, garments, and lodgings, talk about garlands and scents, talk about relations, vehicles, villages, towns, cities, and countries, talk about women and talk about heroes, street talk and talk by the well, talk about those departed in days gone by, rambling chit-chat, speculations about the world and about the sea, talk about gain and loss. He abstains from such frivolous chatter. This too pertains to his virtuous discipline. Whereas some recluses and Brahmins, whilst living on the food offered by the faithful, engage in wrangling argumentation, saying to one another, "You don't understand the doctrine and discipline. It is I who understand this doctrine and discipline. How can you understand this doctrine and discipline? You practice the wrong way. I'm practicing the right way. I'm being consistent. You're inconsistent. What should have been said first, you said last. What should have been said last, you said first. What you took so long to think out has been confuted. Your doctrine has been refuted. You're defeated. Go try to save your doctrine or disentangle yourself now if you can." He abstains from such wrangling argumentation. This too pertains to his virtuous discipline. Whereas some recluses and Brahmins, whilst living on the food offered by the faithful, engage in running messages and errands from kings, ministers of state, Kachas, Brahmins, householders, are youths who command them, "Go here, go there, take this, bring that from there." He abstains from running such messages and errands. This too pertains to his virtuous discipline. Whereas some recluses and Brahmins, while living on the food offered by the faithful, engage in scheming, talking, hinting, belittling others, and pursuing gain with gain, he abstains from such kinds of scheming and talking. This too pertains to his virtuous discipline. Whereas some recluses and Brahmins, whilst living on the food offered by the faithful, earn their living by wrong means of livelihood by such debased arts as prophesying long life, prosperity, and additionally, or the reverse, from the marks on a person's limbs, hands, feet, and additionally, divining by means of omens and signs, making auguries on the basis of thunderbolts and celestial portents, interpreting ominous dreams, telling fortunes from marks on the body, making auguries from marks on cloth gnawed by mice, offering fire oblations, offering oblations from a ladle, offering oblations of husks, rice powder, rice grains, ghee, and oil to the angels, offering oblations from the mouth, offering blood sacrifices to the angels, making predictions based on the fingertips, determining whether the site for a proposed house or garden is propitious or not, making predictions for officers of state, laying demons in a cemetery, laying ghosts, knowledge of charms to be pronounced by one living in an earthen house, snake charming, the poison craft, scorpion craft, rat craft, bird craft, crow craft, foretelling the number of years that a man has to live, reciting charms to give protections from arrows, reciting charms to understand the language of animals. He abstains from such wrong means of livelihood, from such debased arts. This too pertains to his virtuous discipline. Whereas some recluses and Brahmins, while living on the food offered by the faithful, earn their living by wrong means of livelihood by such debased arts as interpreting the significance of the color, shape, and other features of the following items to determine whether they portend fortune or misfortune for their owners: gems, garments, staffs, swords, spears, arrows, bows, other weapons, women, men, boys, girls, slaves, slave women, elephants, horses, buffaloes, bulls, cows, goats, rams, fowl, quails, lizards, earrings, or house gables, tortoises, and other animals. He abstains from such wrong means of livelihood, from such debased arts. This too pertains to his virtuous discipline. Whereas some recluses and Brahmins, while living on the food offered by the faithful, earn their living by wrong means of livelihood by such debased arts as making predictions to the effect that the king will march forth, the king will return, our king will attack, and the enemy king will retreat, our enemy king will attack, and our king will retreat. Our king will triumph, and the enemy king will be defeated. The enemy king will triumph, and our king will be defeated. Thus there will be victory for one and defeat for the other. He abstains from such wrong means of livelihood, from such debased arts. This too pertains to his virtuous discipline. Whereas some recluses and Brahmins, whilst living on the food offered by the faithful, earn their living by wrong means of livelihood by such debased arts as predicting there will be an eclipse of the moon, an eclipse of the soleil, an eclipse of a constellation. The soleil and the moon will go on their proper courses. There will be an aberration of the soleil and moon. The constellations will go on their proper courses. There will be an aberration of a constellation. There will be a fall of meteors. There will be a sky blaze. There will be an earthquake. There will be an earth war. There will be a rising and setting, a darkening and brightening of the moon, soleil, and constellations. Such will be the result of the moon's eclipse, such the result of the soleil's eclipse, and so on down to such will be the result of the rising and setting, darkening and brightening of the moon, soleil, and constellations. He abstains from such wrong means of livelihood, from such debased arts. This too pertains to his virtuous discipline. Whereas some recluses and Brahmins, whilst living on the food offered by the faithful, earn their living by wrong means of livelihood by such debased arts as predicting there will be an abundant rain, there will be a drought, there will be a benevolent harvest, there will be a famine, there will be security, there will be danger, there will be sickness, there will be health. Or they earn their living by accounting, computation, calculation, the composing of poetry, and speculations about the world. He abstains from such wrong means of livelihood, but from such debased arts. This too pertains to his virtuous discipline. Whereas some recluses and Brahmins, whilst living on the food offered by the faithful, earn their living by wrong means of livelihood by such debased arts as arranging auspicious dates for marriages, both in which the bride is brought home and those in which she is sent out, arranging auspicious dates for betrothals and divorces, arranging auspicious dates for the accumulation or expenditure of money, reciting charms to make people lucky or unlucky, rejuvenating the fetuses of a ward of women, reciting spells to bind a man's tongue, to paralyze his jaws, to make him lose control over his hands, or to bring on deafness, obtaining auricular answers to questions by means of a mirror, a girl, or an angel, worshipping the Soleil, worshipping Mahabrahma, bringing forth flames from the mouth, invoking the angel of luck. He abstains from such wrong means of livelihood, from such debased arts. This too pertains to his virtuous discipline. Whereas some recluses and Brahmas, while living on the food offered by the faithful, earn their living by wrong means of livelihood by such debased arts as promising gifts to deities in return for favors, fulfilling such promises, demonology, reciting spells after entering an earthen house, inducing virility and impotence, preparing and consecrating sites for a house, giving ceremonial mouthwashes and ceremonial bathing, offering sacrificial fires, administering emetics, purgatives, expectorants, and phlegmagogues, administering medicines through the ear and through the nose, administering ointments and counter-ointments, practicing fine surgery on the eyes and ears, practicing general surgery on the body, practicing as a children's doctor. He abstains from such wrong means of livelihood, from such debased arts. This too pertains to his virtuous discipline. Kavada, the monk who is thus possessed of virtuous discipline, sees no danger anywhere in regard to his restraint by virtuous discipline. Just as a head-anointed noble warrior who has defeated his enemy sees no danger anywhere from his enemies, so the monk who is thus possessed of virtuous discipline sees no danger anywhere in regard to his restraint by virtuous discipline. Endowed with his noble aggregate of virtuous discipline, he experiences within himself a blameless happiness. In this way, Kavada, the monk, is possessed of virtuous discipline. And how, Kavada, does the monk guard the doors of his sense faculties? Herein, Kavada, having seen a form with the eye, the monk does not grasp at the sign or the details, since if he were to dwell without restraint over the faculty of the eye, evil and unwholesome states such as covetousness and grief might assail him. He practices restraint, guards the faculty of the eye, and achieves restraint over the faculty of the eye. Having heard a sound with the ear, having smelled an odor with the nose, having tasted a flavor with the tongue, having touched a tangible object with the body, having cognized a mind object with the mind, the monk does not grasp at the sign or the details. Since if he were to dwell without restraint over the faculty of the mind, evil and unwholesome states such as covetousness and grief might assail him. He practices restraint, guards the faculty of the mind, and achieves restraint over the faculty of the mind. Endowed with this noble restraint of the sense faculties, he experiences within himself an unblemished happiness. In this way, Kavada, the monk, guards the doors of the sense faculties. And how Kavada is the monk endowed with mindfulness and clear comprehension? Herein, Kavada, in going forward and returning, the monk acts with clear comprehension. In looking ahead and looking aside, he acts with clear comprehension. In bending and stretching the limbs, he acts with clear comprehension. In wearing his robes and cloak and utilizing his alms bowl, he acts with clear comprehension. In eating, drinking, chewing, and tasting, he acts with clear comprehension. In defecating and urinating, he acts with clear comprehension. In going, standing, sitting, lying down, waking up, speaking, and remaining silent, he acts with clear comprehension. In this way, Kavada, the monk, is endowed with mindfulness and clear comprehension. And how Kavada is the monk content? Herein, Kavada, monk, is content with robes to protect his body and alms food to sustain his belly. Wherever he goes, he sets out, taking only his requisites along with him. Just as a bird, wherever it goes, flies with its wings as its only burden, in the same way, a monk is content with robes to protect his body and alms food to sustain his belly. Wherever he goes, he sets out, taking only his requisites along with him. In this way, Kavada, the monk, is content. Endowed with this noble aggregate of virtuous discipline, this noble restraint over the sense faculties, this noble mindfulness and clear comprehension, and this noble contentment, he resorts to a secluded dwelling, a forest, the foot of a tree, a mountain, a glen, a hillside cave, a cremation ground, a jungle grove, the open air, a heap of straw. After returning from his alms round, following his meals, he sits down, crosses his legs, holds his body erect, and sets up mindfulness before him. Having abandoned covetousness for the world, he dwells with a mind free from covetousness. He purifies his mind from covetousness. Having abandoned ill will and hatred, he dwells with a benevolent mind, sympathetic for the well-being of all living beings. He purifies his mind from ill will and hatred. Having abandoned dullness and drowsiness, he dwells perceiving light, mindful and clearly comprehending. He purifies his mind from dullness and drowsiness. Having abandoned restlessness and worry, he dwells at ease within himself with a peaceful mind. He purifies his mind from restlessness and worry. Having abandoned doubt, he dwells as one who has passed beyond doubt, unperplexed about wholesome states. He purifies his mind from doubt. Kavada, suppose a man were to take a loan and apply it to his business, and his business were to succeed so that he could pay back his old debts and would have enough money left over to maintain a wife. He would reflect on this, and as a result, he would become glad and experience joy. Again, Kavada, suppose a man were to become sick, afflicted, gravely ill, so that he could not enjoy his food, and his strength would decline. After some time, he would recover from that illness and would enjoy his food and regain his bodily strength. He would reflect on this, and as a result, he would become glad and experience joy. Again, Kavada, suppose a man were locked up in prison. After some time, he would be released from prison, safe and secure, with no loss of his possessions. He would reflect on this, and as a result, he would become glad and experience joy. Again, Kavada, suppose a man were a slave without independence, subservient to others, unable to go where he wants. After some time, he would be released from slavery and gain his independence. He would no longer be subservient to others, but a free man able to go where he wants. He would reflect on this, and as a result, he would become glad and experience joy. Again, Kavada, suppose a man with wealth and possessions were traveling along a desert road where food was scarce and dangers were many. After some time, he would cross over the desert and arrive safely at a village which is safe and free from danger. He would reflect on this, and as a result, he would become glad and experience joy. In the same way, Kavada, when a monk sees that these 5 hindrances are unabandoned within himself, he regards that as a debt, as a sickness, as a confinement in prison, as slavery, as a desert road. But when he sees that these 5 hindrances have been abandoned within himself, he regards that as freedom from debt, as benevolent health, as release from prison, as freedom from slavery, as a place of safety. When he sees that these 5 hindrances have been abandoned within himself, gladness arises. When he is glad, and rapture arises. When his mind is filled with rapture, his body becomes tranquil. Tranquil in body, he experiences happiness. Being happy, his mind becomes concentrated. Quite secluded from sense pleasures, secluded from unwholesome states, he enters and dwells in the first jhana, which is accompanied by applied and sustained thought and filled with the rapture and happiness born of seclusion. He drenches, steeps, saturates, and suffuses his mind with this rapture and happiness born of seclusion, so that there is no part of his entire body which is not suffused by this rapture and happiness. Kavada, suppose a skilled bath attendant or his apprentice were to pour soap powder into a metal basin, sprinkle it with water, and knead it into a ball, so that the ball of soap powder be pervaded by moisture, encompassed by moisture, suffused with moisture inside and out, yet would not trickle. In the same way, Kavada the monk drenches, steeps, saturates, and suffuses his body with the rapture and happiness born of seclusion, so that there is no part of his entire body which is not suffused by this rapture and happiness. This Kavada is what is called the miracle of instruction. Further Kavada, with the subsiding of applied sustained thought, the monk enters and dwells in the second jhana, which is accompanied by internal confidence and unification of mind, is without applied and sustained thought, and is filled with the rapture and happiness born of concentration. He drenches, steeps, saturates, and suffuses his body with this rapture and happiness born of concentration, so that there is no part of his entire body which is not suffused by this rapture and happiness. Kavada, suppose there were a deep lake whose waters welled up from below. It would have no inlet for water from the east, west, north, or south, nor would it be refilled from time to time with showers of rain. Yet a current of cool water welling up from within the lake would drench, steep, saturate, and suffuse the whole lake, so that there would be no part of that entire lake which is not suffused with the cool water. In the same way, Kavada, the monk drenches, steeps, saturates, and suffuses his body with the rapture and happiness born of concentration, so that there is no part of his entire body which is not suffused by this rapture and happiness. This Kavada is what is called the miracle of instruction. Further Kavada, with the fading away of rapture, the monk dwells in equanimity, mindful and clearly comprehending, and experiences happiness with the body. Thus he enters and dwells in the third jhana, of which the noble ones declare he dwells happily with equanimity and mindfulness. He drenches, steeps, saturates, and suffuses his body with this happiness free from rapture, so that there is no part of his entire body which is not suffused by this happiness. Kavada, suppose in a lotus pond there were blue, white, or red lotuses that have been born in the water, grow in the water, and never rise up above the water, but flourish immersed in the water. From their tips to their roots they would be drenched, steeped, saturated, and suffused with cool water, so that there would be no part of those lotuses not suffused with cool water. In the same way, Kavada, the monk drenches, steeps, saturates, and suffuses his body with the happiness free from rapture, so that there is no part of his entire body which is not suffused by this happiness. This Kavada is what is called the miracle of instruction. And further Kavada, with the abandoning of pleasure and pain, and with the previous passing away of joy and grief, the monk enters and dwells in the fourth jhana, which is neither pleasant nor painful, and contains mindfulness fully purified by equanimity. He sits suffusing his body with a pure bright mind, so that there is no part of his entire body not suffused by a pure bright mind. Kavada, suppose a man were to be sitting covered with from head down by a white cloth, so that there would be no part of his entire body not suffused by the white cloth. In the same way, Kavada, the monk sits suffusing his body with a pure bright mind, so that there is no part of his entire body not suffused by a pure bright mind. This Kavada is what is called the miracle of instruction. When his mind is thus concentrated, pure and bright, unblemished, free from defects, malleable, wieldy, steady, and attained to imperturbability, he directs and inclines it to knowledge and vision. He understands thus: this is my body, having material form, composed of the 4 primary elements, originating from far and more, built up out of rice and gruel, impermanent, subject to rubbing and pressing, to dissolution and dispersion. And this is my consciousness, supported by it, bound up with it. Kavada, suppose there were a beautiful barrel gem of purest water, a faceted, well-cut, clear, limpid, flawless, endowed with all excellent qualities. And through it would run a blue, yellow, red, white, or brown thread. A man with keen sight, taking it in his hand, would reflect upon it thus: this is a beautiful barrel gem of purest water, a faceted, well-cut, clear, limpid, flawless, endowed with all excellent qualities, and running through it there is this blue, yellow, red, white, or brown thread. In the same way, Kavada, when his mind is thus concentrated, pure and bright, the monk directs and inclines it to knowledge and vision, and understands thus: this is my body having material form, and this is my consciousness supported by it and bound up with it. This Kavada is what is called the miracle of instruction. When his mind is thus concentrated, pure and bright, unblemished, free from defects, malleable, wieldy, steady, and attained to imperturbability, he directs and inclines it to knowledge of the destruction of the defilements. He understands as it truly is, this is suffering. He understands as it truly is, this is the origin of suffering. He understands as it truly is, this is the cessation of suffering. He understands as it truly is, this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. He understands as it truly is, these are the defilements. He understands as it truly is, this is the origin of the defilements. He understands as it truly is, this is the cessation of the defilements. He understands as it truly is, this is the way leading to the cessation of the defilements. Knowing and seeing thus, his mind is liberated from the defilement of sensual desire, from the defilement of becoming, and from the defilement of ignorance. When it is liberated, the knowledge rises, it is liberated. He understands, destroyed his birth, the holy life has been lived, what had to be done has been done, there is nothing further beyond this. Kavada, suppose in a mountain glen there were a lake with clear water, limpid and unsullied. A man with clean sight standing on the bank would see oyster shells, sand and pebbles, and shoals of fish moving about and keeping still. He would think to himself, this is a lake with clear water, limpid and unsullied, and there within it are oyster shells, sand and pebbles, and shoals of fish moving about and keeping still. In the same way, Kavada, when his mind is thus concentrated, pure and right, the monk directs and inclines it to the knowledge of the destruction of the defilements. He understands as it truly is, this is suffering. He understands as it truly is, this is the origin of suffering. He understands as it truly is, this is the cessation of suffering. He understands as it truly is, this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. He understands as it truly is, these are the defilements. He understands as it truly is, this is the origin of the defilements. He understands as it truly is, this is the cessation of the defilements. He understands as it truly is, this is the way leading to the cessation of the defilements. Destroys his birth, the holy life has been lived, what had to be done has been done, there is nothing further beyond this. This Kavada is what is called the miracle of instruction. So these Kavada are the three miracles I've understood and actualized myself and made known to others. A visit to the Deva. Once upon a time, Kavada, a question occurred to a certain monk in this order of monks. Where now do these four great elements, earth, water, fire, and wind, cease without remainder? So that monk Kavada attained to such a state of concentration that the way leading to the Deva realms became clear to him. Then that monk Kavada went up to the realm of the four great kings and said to the Devas there, where, friends, do the four great elements, earth, water, fire, and air, and wind, cease without remainder? And when he had asked them, the Devas in the heaven of the four great kings said to him, Monk, we do not know that, but there are the four great kings, further powerful and further glorious than we. They will know. Then Kavada, that monk, went to the four great kings and put the same question, and was sent on by a similar reply to the 33 angels, who sent him on to their king Saka, who sent him on to the Yamadevas, who sent him on to their king Sumaya, who sent him on to the Tusita Devas, who sent him on to their king Santusita, and sent him on to the Namanarati Devas, who sent him on to their king Sinumita, who sent him on to the Parinamita Vasavati Devas, who sent him on to their king Vasavati, who sent him on to the Devas of the Brahma world. Then that monk Kavada became so concentrated that the way to the Brahma world became clear to him, and he drew to the Devas and of the retinue of Rama and said, where, friends, did the four great elements, earth, water, fire, and wind, cease without remainder? And when he had thus spoken, the Devas of the retinue of Brahma replied, Monk, we do not know that, but there is Brahma, the great Brahma, the supreme one, the mighty one, the all-seeing one, the ruler, the master of all, the controller, the creator, the chief of all, appointing each to his place, the ancient of days, the creator of all that is to be, of all that is and is to be. The Brahma is further powerful and further glorious than we. The Brahma will know. Where then is that great Brahma now? Monk, we know not when or how or why Brahma appears, but monk, when the signs of Brahma's coming appear, when a light appears and a radiance shines, then will Brahma be manifest. For that is the portent of the manifestation of Brahma, when a light appears and a radiance shines. And it was not long, Kavada, before the great Brahma became manifest. And that monk drew near to him and said, wherefore do the four great elements, earth, water, fire, and wind, cease from without remainder? And when he had thus spoken, that great Brahma said to him, Monk, I am the great Brahma, the supreme, the mighty, the all-seeing, the ruler, the master of all, the controller, the creator, the chief of all, appointing each to his place, the Ancient of Days, the Father of all that is to be. Then that monk said to Brahma, I did not ask you, friend, as to whether you were indeed all that you now say, but I ask you where the four great elements, earth, water, fire, and the wind, cease without remainder. Then again Kavada Brahma gave the same reply, and that monk yet a third time asked his question to Brahma as before. Then Kavada the great Brahma took that monk by the arm, led him aside, and said, These devas of the retinue of Brahma, monk, believe that there is nothing I cannot see, nothing I have not understood, nothing I have not actualized. Therefore I gave no answer in their presence. I do not know, monk, where those four great elements, earth, water, fire, and wind, cease without remainder. Therefore you, monk, have done wrong, have acted unwisely in that, ignoring the exalted one, you are undertaking this long search amongst others for an answer to this question. Go now, return to the exalted one, ask him the question, and accept the answer he gives you. Then Kavada, that monk, as quickly as a strong man could stretch or flex his arm, vanished from the Brahma world and approached me, paid homage to me, and sat down to one side. Seated, he said to me, Where is it, sir, that these four great elements, earth, water, fire, and wind, cease without remainder? And when he had thus spoken, Kavada answered him thus, Long ago, monk, when seafaring traders were setting sail on an ocean voyage, they took with them a land-sighting bird. And when the ship got out of the sight of the shore, they would let the land-sighting bird free. Such a bird would fly to the east and to the south and to the west and to the north, to the zenith and to the intermediate points of the compass. And if anywhere on the horizon it caught sight of land, it would fly there. But if all around no land were visible, it would return to that ship. Just so, monk, having sought an answer to this question, and sought it in vain, even up to the Brahma world, you have come back to me. Now the question, monk, should not be asked as you have put it. Instead of asking where the four great elements cease without remainder, you should have asked, where do earth, water, fire, and air no footing find? Where are long and short, small and great, fair and foul? Where are name and form brought to an end? And the answer is this: consciousness that is silence, limitless, all illuminating. Then water, earth, fire, and wind find no footing. Then long and short, small and large, pleasant and unpleasant. Then name and form are all brought to an end. With the cessation of vijnana, divided knowledge, all of this is brought to an end. With the cessation of vijnana, divided knowing, all this is brought to an end. Thus spoke the exalted one, and Kavada the young householder, pleased at heart, rejoiced at the spoken word. Sukhabhaga, Dhammapada, Sukhabhaga, numero 15. Happy indeed we live, friendly amidst hostile men we dwell free from hatred. Happy indeed we live, friendly amidst the afflicted by craving, amidst afflicted men we dwell free from affliction. Happy indeed we live, free from avarice, amidst the avaricious men we dwell free from avarice. Happy indeed we live, we who possess nothing, feeders on joy, we shall be like the radiant angels. Victory begets enmity, the defeated dwell in pain. Happily the peaceful live, discarding both victory and defeat. There is no fire like lust, and no crime like hatred. There is no ill like the aggregates of existence, and no bliss higher than the peace of Nibbana. Hunger is the worst disease, conditioned things the worst suffering. Knowing this as it truly is, the wise realize Nibbana, the highest bliss. Health is the most precious gain, and contentment the greatest wealth. A trustworthy person is the best kinsman, Nibbana the highest bliss. Having savored the taste of solitude and peace of Nibbana, pain-free and stainless, he becomes, drinking deep the taste of the bliss of the truth. Benevolent is it to see the noble ones, to live with them is ever blissful. One will always be happy by not encountering fools. Indeed, he who moves in the company of fools grieves for longing. Association with fools is ever painful, like partnership with an enemy, but association with the wise is happy, like meeting one's own kinsman. Therefore follow the noble one who is steadfast, wise, learned, dutiful, and devout. One should follow only such a man who is truly benevolent and discerning, even as the moon follows the path of the stars. Gospels, Mark 1 a 2. The beginning of the benevolent news about Jesus, the Messiah, the Son of God. As it is written in Isaiah the prophet, I will send my messenger ahead of you who will prepare your way. A voice of one calling in the wilderness, prepare the way for God, make straight paths for God. And so John the Baptist appeared in the wilderness, preaching a baptism of repentance for the forgiveness of sins. The whole Judean countryside and all the people of Jerusalem went out to him. Confessing their sins, they were baptized by him in the Jordan River. John wore clothing made of camel's hair with a leather belt around his waist, and he ate locusts and wild honey. And this was his message: After me comes the one further powerful than I, the straps of whose sandals I am not worthy to stoop down and untie. I baptize you with water, but he will baptize you with the Holy Spirit. At that time Jesus came from Nazareth in Galilee and was baptized by John in the Jordan. Just as Jesus was coming up out of the water, he saw heaven being torn open, and the Spirit descending on him like a dove. And a voice came from heaven, You are my Son, whom I love. With you I am well pleased. At once the Spirit sent him out into the wilderness, and he was in the wilderness 40 days, being tempted by Satan. He was with the wild animals, and angels attended him. After John was put in prison, Jesus went into Galilee, proclaiming the benevolent news of God. The time has come, he said. The sovereignty of God has come near. Repent and believe the benevolent news. As Jesus walked beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw Simon and his brother Andrew casting a net into the lake, for they were fishermen. Come, follow me, Jesus said, and I will send you out to fish for people. At once they left their nets and followed him. When he had gone a little further, he saw James the son of Zebedee and his brother John in a boat preparing their nets. Without delay he called them, and they left their father Zebedee in the boat with the hired men and followed him. They went to Capernaum, and when Shabbat came, Jesus went into the synagogue and began to teach. The people were amazed at his teaching, because he taught them as one who had authority, not as their teachers of the law. Just then a man in their synagogue who was possessed by an impure spirit cried out, What do you want with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God. Be quiet, said Jesus sternly. Come out of him. The impure spirit shook the man violently and came out of him with a shriek. The people were all so amazed that they asked each other, What is this? A new teaching? And with authority he even gives orders to impure spirits, and they obey him. News about him spread quickly over the whole region of Galilee. As soon as they left the synagogue, they went with James and John to the home of Simon and Andrew. Simon's mother-in-law was in bed with a fever, and they immediately told Jesus about her. So he went to her, took her hand, and helped her up. The fever left her, and she began to wait on them. That evening, after the soleil set, the people brought to Jesus all the sick and demon-possessed. The whole town gathered at the door, and Jesus healed many who had various diseases. He also drove out many demons, but he would not let the demons speak, because they knew who he was. Very early in the matin, whilst it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. Simon and his companions went to look for him, and when they found him, they exclaimed, Everyone is looking for you. Jesus replied, Let us go somewhere else, to the nearby villages, so I can preach there also. That is why I have come. So he traveled throughout Galilee, preaching in their synagogues and driving out demons. A man with leprosy came to him and begged him on his knees, If you are willing, you can make me clean. Jesus was indignant. He reached out his hand and touched the man. I am willing, he said, be clean. Immediately the leprosy left him, and he was cleansed. Jesus sent him away at once with a strong warning. See that you don't tell this to anyone, but go show yourself to the priest and offer the offering that Moshe commanded for your cleansing as a testimony to them. Instead, he went out and began to talk freely, spreading the news. As a result, Jesus could no longer enter a town openly, but stayed outside in lonely places. Yet the people still came to him from everywhere. A few days later, when Jesus again entered Capernaum, the people heard that he had come home. They gathered in such large numbers that there was no room left, not even outside the door, and he preached the word to them. Some men came, bringing to him a paralyzed man, carried by 4 of them. Since they could not get him to Jesus because of the crowd, they made an opening in the roof above Jesus by digging through it, and then lowered the mat the man was lying on. Then, when Jesus saw their faith, he said to the paralyzed man, Son, your sins are forgiven. Now some teachers of the law were sitting there, thinking to themselves, Why did this fellow talk like that? He's blaspheming. Who can forgive sins but God alone? Immediately Jesus knew in his spirit that this was what they were thinking in their hearts, and he said to them, Why are you thinking these things? Which is easier to say to this paralyzed man, Your sins are forgiven, or to say, Get up and take your mat and walk? But I want you to know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins. So he said to the man, I tell you, get up, take your mat, and go home. He got up, took his mat, and walked out in full view of them all. This amazed everyone, and they praised God, saying, We have never seen anything like this. Once again, Jesus went beside the lake, a large crowd came to him, and he began to teach them. As he walked along, he saw Levi, the son of Alphaeus, sitting at the tax collector's booth. "Follow me," Jesus told him, and Levi got up and followed him. While Jesus was having dinner at Levi's house, many tax collectors and sinners were eating with him and his disciples, for there were many who followed him. When the teachers of the law, who were Pharisees, saw him eating with the sinners and tax collectors, they asked his disciples, "Why does he eat with tax collectors and sinners?" On hearing this, Jesus said to them, "It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners." Now John's disciples and the Pharisees were fasting. Some people came and asked Jesus, "How is it that John's disciples and the disciples of the Pharisees are fasting, but yours are not?" Jesus answered, "How can the guests of the bridegroom fast while he is with them? They cannot, so long as they have him with them. But the time will come when the bridegroom will be taken from them, and on that day they will fast. No one sews a patch of unshrunk cloth on an old garment, otherwise the portion will pull away from the old, making the tear worse. And no one pours new wine into old wineskins, otherwise the wine will burst the skins, and both the wine and the wineskins will be ruined. No, they pour new wine into new wineskins." One Shabbat, Jesus was going through the grain fields, and as his disciples walked along, they began to pick some heads of grain. The Pharisees said to him, "Look, why are they doing what is unlawful on Shabbat?" He answered, "Have you never read what David did when he and his companions were hungry and in need? In the days of Abiathar the high priest, he entered the house of In the days of Abiathar the high priest, he entered the house of God and ate the consecrated bread, which is lawful only for a priest to eat. And he also gave some to his companions. Then he said to them, "Shabbat was made for man, not man for Shabbat. So the Son of Man is master even of Shabbat." Quran, Surah An-Nahl, 16. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. Inevitable cometh to pass the command of Allah. Seek ye not then to hasten it. Glory to Allah, and distant is Allah above having the partners they ascribe to Allah. Unto Allah. Allah doth send down Allah's angels with inspiration of Allah's command to such of Allah's servants as Allah pleaseth, saying, "Warn men that there is none other deity but I, so do your duty unto me." Allah has created the heavens and the earth for just ends. Distant is Allah above having the partners they ascribe to Allah. Allah has created man from a sperm jar, and behold, this same man becomes an open disputer. And cattle Allah has created for you men, from them ye derive warmth and numerous benefits, and of their meat ye eat, and ye have a sense of pride and beauty in them as ye drive them home in the evening, and as ye lead them forth to pasture in them at time. And they carry your heavy loads to lands that ye could not otherwise reach except with souls distressed, for your Lord is indeed most kind, most merciful. And Allah has created horses, mules, and donkeys for you to ride and utilize for show, and Allah has created other things of which ye have no knowledge. And unto Allah leads the straight the way, but there are ways that turn aside. If Allah had willed, Allah could have guided you, all of you. It is Allah who sends down rain from the sky, from it ye drink, and out of it grows the vegetation on which ye feed your cattle. With it Allah produces for you corn, olives, date palms, grapes, and every kind of fruit. Verily this is a sign for those who give thought. Allah has made subject to you the night and the days, the soleil and the moon, and the stars are in subjugation by Allah's command. Verily in this are signs for men who are wise. And the things on this earth which Allah has multiplied in varying colors and qualities, verily in this is a sign for men who celebrate the praises of Allah in gratitude. It is Allah who has made the sea subject, that ye may eat thereof flesh that is fresh and tender, and that ye may extract therefrom ornaments to wear, and that thou seest the ships therein that plow the waves, that ye may seek thus of the bounty of Allah, and that ye may be grateful. And Allah has set up on the earth mountains, standing firm, lest it should shake with you, and rivers and roads that ye may guide yourselves, and marks and signposts, and by the stars men guide themselves. Is then Allah who creates like one that creates not? Will ye not receive admonition? If ye would count up the favors of Allah, never would ye be able to number them, for Allah is all forgiving, most merciful. And Allah doth know what ye conceal and what ye reveal. Those whom they invoke besides Allah create nothing and are themselves created. They are things dead, lifeless, nor do they know when they will be raised up. Your Allah is one Allah. As to those who believe not in the hereafter, their hearts refuse to know, and they are arrogant. Undoubtedly Allah doth know what they conceal and what they reveal. Verily Allah loveth not the arrogant. When it is said to them, what is it that your Lord has revealed? They say, tales of the ancients. Let them bear on the day of judgment their own burdens in full, and also something of the burdens of those without knowledge, whom they misled. Alas, how grievous are the burdens they will bear. Those before them did also plot against Allah's way, but Allah took their structures from their foundations, and the roof fell down on them from above, and the wrath seized them from directions they did not perceive. Then on the day of judgment Allah will cover them with shame and say, where are my partners concerning whom ye used to dispute with the holy? Those endowed with knowledge will say, this day indeed are the unbelievers covered with shame and misery, namely those whose lives the angels take in a state of wrongdoing to their own souls. Then would they offer submission with the pretense, we did no evil knowingly. The angels will reply, nay, but verily Allah knoweth all that ye did. So enter the gates of hell to dwell therein. Thus evil indeed is the abode of the arrogant. To the righteous, when it is said, what is it that your Lord has revealed? They say, all that is benevolent. To those who do benevolence, there is benevolence in this world, and the home of the hereafter is even better, and excellent indeed is the home of the righteous. Gardens of eternity, which they will enter, beneath them flow pleasant rivers. They will have therein all that they wish. Thus doth Allah reward the righteous, namely those whose lives the angels take in a state of purity, saying to them, peace be on you, enter ye the garden because of the benevolence which ye did in the world. Do the unholy wait until the angels come to them, or there comes to the command of thy Lord for their doom? So did those who went before them, but Allah wronged them not. Nay, they wronged their own souls. But the evil results of their deeds overtook them, and that very wrath at which they had scoffed hemmed them in. The worshippers of false deities say, if Allah had so willed, we should not have worshipped aught but Allah, neither we nor our fathers, nor should we have prescribed prohibitions other than Allah's. So did those who went before them. But what is the mission of apostles but to preach the clear message? For we assuredly sent amongst every people an apostle with the command, serve Allah and eschew evil. Of the people were some who Allah guided, and some on whom error became inevitably established. So travel through the earth and see what was the end of those who denied the truth. If thou art anxious for their guidance, yet Allah guideth not such as Allah leaves to astray, and there is none to help them. They swear their strongest oaths by Allah that Allah will not raise up those who die. Nay, but it is a promise binding on Allah in truth, but most amongst mankind realize it not. Thus they must be raised up in order that Allah may manifest to them the truth of that wherein they differ, and the rejectors of truth may realize that they had indeed surrendered to falsehood. For to anything which we have willed, we but say the word, be, and it is. To those who leave their homes in the cause of Allah after suffering oppression, we will assuredly give a benevolent home in this world, but truly the reward of the hereafter will be greater if they only realize this. They are those who persevere in patience and put their trust on their Lord. And before thee also the apostles we sent were but men, to whom we granted inspiration. If ye realize this not, ask of those who possess the message. We sent them with clear signs and books of dark prophecies, and we have sent down unto thee also the message, that thou mayest explain clearly to men what is sent for them, and that they may give thought. Do then those who devise evil plots feel secure that Allah will not cause the earth to swallow them up, or that the wrath will not seize them from directions they little perceive, or that Allah may not call them to account in the midst of their goings to and fro without a chance of their frustrating Allah, or that Allah may not call them to account by a process of slow wastage, for thy Lord is indeed full of knowledge and mercy. Do they not look at Allah's creation, even amongst inanimate things, how their very shadows turn around from the right and the left, prostrating themselves to Allah, and that in the humblest manner? And to Allah doth obeisance all that is in the heavens and on earth, whether moving, living creatures, or the angels, for none are arrogant before their Lord. They all revere their Lord high above them, and they do all that they are commanded. Allah has said, Take not for worship two deities, for Allah is just one Allah, then fear me and me alone. To Allah belongs whatever is in the heavens and on earth, and to Allah is duty due always, then will ye fear other than Allah. And ye have no benevolent thing but is from Allah. And further, when ye are touched by distress, unto Allah ye cry with groans. Yet when Allah removes the distress from you, behold, some of you turn to other deities to join with their Lord, as if to show their ingratitude for the favors we have bestowed on them. Then enjoy your brief day, but soon will ye know your folly. And they even assign to things they do not know a portion out of that which we have bestowed for their sustenance. By Allah, ye shall certainly be called to account for your false inventions. And they assign daughters for Allah. Glory be to Allah, and for themselves sons, the issue they desire. When news is brought to one of them of the birth of a female child, his face darkens, and he is filled with the inward grief. With shame does he hide himself from his people because of the bad news he has had. Shall he retain it on sufferance and contempt, or bury it in the dust? Ah, what an evil choice they decide on. To those who believe not in the hereafter applies the similitude of evil. To Allah applies this highest similitude, for Allah is the exalted in power, full of wisdom. If Allah were to punish men for their wrongdoing, Allah would not leave on the earth a single living creature, but Allah gives them respite for a stated term. When their term expires, they would not be able to delay the punishment for a single hour, just as they would not be able to anticipate it for a single hour. They attribute to Allah what they hate for themselves, and their tongues assert the falsehood that all benevolent things are for themselves. Without a doubt for them is the fire, and they will be the first to be hastened on into it. By Allah, we also sent our apostles to peoples before thee, but Satan made to the wicked their own acts seem alluring. He is also their patron today, but they shall have a most grievous penalty. And we sent down the book to thee for the express purpose that thou shouldst make clear to them those things in which they offer, to them those things in which they differ, and that it should be a guide and a mercy to those who believe. And Allah sends down rain from the skies and gives therewith life to the earth after its death. Verily, this is a sign for those who listen. And verily, in cattle too will ye find an instructive sign. From what is within their bodies between excretions and blood, we produce for you milk pure and agreeable to those who drink it. And from the fruit of the date palm and vine ye get out wholesome drink and food. Behold, in this also is a sign for those who are wise. And thy Lord taught the bee to build its cells in hills, on trees, and in men's habitations, then to eat of all the produce of the earth, and find with skill the spacious paths of its Lord. There issues from within their bodies a drink of varying colors, wherein is healing for men. Verily, in this is a sign for those who give thought. It is Allah who creates you and takes your souls out at death, and of you there are some who are sent back to a feeble age, so that they know nothing after having known much, for Allah is all-knowing, all-powerful. Allah has bestowed Allah's gifts of sustenance further freely on some of you than on others. Those further favored are not going to throw back their gifts to those whom their right hands possess, so as to be equal in that respect. Will they then deny the favors of Allah? And Allah has made for you mates and companions of your own nature, and made for you out of them sons and daughters and grandchildren, and provided you sustenance of the best. Will they then believe in vain things and be ungrateful for Allah's favors, and worship others than Allah, such as have no power of providing them for sustenance with anything in the heavens or earth, and cannot possibly have such power? Invent not similitudes for Allah knoweth, and ye know not. Allah sets forth the parable of two men, one a slave under the dominion of another, he has no power of any sort, and the other a man on whom we have bestowed benevolent favors from ourselves, and he spends thereof freely, privately and publicly. Are the two equal? By no means. Praise be to Allah, but most of them understand not. Allah sets forth another parable of two men, one of them dumb, with no power of any sort, a wearisome burden is he to his master, whichever way B directs him, he brings no benefits. Is such a man equal with one who commands justice and is on a straight way? To Allah belongeth the mystery of the heavens and the earth, and the decision of the hour of judgment is as the twinkling of an eye, or even quicker, for Allah hath power over all things. It is Allah who brought you forth from the wombs of your mothers when ye knew nothing, and Allah gave you hearing and sight and intelligence and affections that ye may give thanks to Allah. Do they not look at the birds held poised in the midst of the air and the sky? Nothing holds them up but the power of Allah. Verily in this are signs for those who believe. It is Allah who made your habitations homes of rest and quiet for you, and made for you out of the skins of animals tents for dwellings, which ye find so light and handy when ye travel and when ye stop in your travels, and out of their wool and their soft fibers between wool and hair, and their hairs, which rich stuff and articles of convenience to serve you for a time. It is Allah who made out of the things Allah created some things to give you shade of the hills. Allah had made some of for you shelter, made some of your shelter. Allah made your garments to protect you from heat, and coats of mail to protect you from your mutual violence. Thus doth Allah complete Allah's favors on you, that ye may bow to Allah's will in Islam. But if they turn away, thy duty is only to preach the clear message. They recognize the favors of Allah, then they deny them, and most of them are creatures ungrateful. One day we shall raise from all peoples a witness, then will no excuse be accepted from unbelievers, nor will they receive any favors. When the wrongdoers actually see the penalty, then will it in no way be mitigated, nor will they then receive respite. When those who gave partners to Allah will see their partners, they will say, Our Lord, these are our partners, those whom we used to invoke besides thee, but they will throw back their word at them and say, Indeed, ye are liars. That day shall they openly show their submission to Allah, and all their inventions shall leave them in the lurch. Those who reject Allah and hinder men from the path of Allah, for them will we add penalty to penalty, for that they used to spread mischief. One day we shall raise from all peoples a witness against them from amongst themselves, and we shall bring thee as a witness against these thy people. And we have sent down to thee the book explaining all things, a guide and a mercy, and glad tidings to Muslims. Allah commands justice, the doing of benevolence, and liberality to kith and kin, and Allah forbids all shameful deeds and injustice and rebellion. Allah instructs you that ye may receive admonition. Fulfill the covenant of Allah when ye have entered into it, and break not your oaths after ye have confirmed them. Indeed, ye have made Allah your surety, for Allah knoweth all that ye do. And be not like a woman who breaks into untwisted strands the yarn which she has spun after it has become strong. Nor take your oath to practice deception between yourselves, lest one party should be further numerous than another. For Allah will test you by this, and on the day of judgment Allah will certainly make clear to you the truth of that wherein ye disagree. If Allah so willed, Allah could make you all one people, but Allah leaves straying whom Allah pleases, and Allah guides whom Allah pleases, but ye shall certainly be called to account for all your actions. And take not your oaths to practice deception between yourselves, with the result that someone's foot may slip after it was firmly planted, and ye may have to taste the evil consequences of having hindered men from the path of Allah, and a mighty wrath descend on you. Nor sell the covenant of Allah for a miserable price, for with Allah is a prize much better for you if you only knew. What is with you must vanish, what is with Allah will endure, and we will certainly bestow on those who patiently persevere their reward according to the best of their actions. Whoever works righteousness, man or woman, and has faith, verily to him will we give a new life, a life that is benevolent and pure, and we will bestow on such their reward according to the best of their actions. When thou dost read the Quran, seek Allah's protection from Satan, the rejected one. No authority has he over those who believe and put their trust in their Lord. Allah's authority is over those only who take Allah as patron and who join partners When thou dost read the Quran, seek Allah's protection from Satan, the rejected one. No authority has he over those who believe and put their trust in their Lord. His authority is over those only who take him as patron and who join partners with Allah. When we substitute one revelation for another, and Allah knows best what Allah reveals in stages, they say, Thou art but a forger, but most of them understand not. Say, the Holy Spirit has brought the revelation from the Lord, thy Lord, in truth, in order to strengthen those who believe, and as a guide and glad tidings to Muslims. We know indeed that they say, It is a man that teaches him. The tongue of him they wickedly point to is notably foreign, whilst this is Arabic, pure and clear. Those who believe not in the signs of Allah, Allah will not guide them, and theirs will be a grievous penalty. It is those who believe not in the signs of Allah that forge falsehood, it is they who lie. Anyone who after accepting faith in Allah enters unbelief, except under compulsion, his heart remaining firm in faith, but such as open their breast to unbelief, on them is wrath from Allah, and theirs will be a dreadful penalty. This is because they love the life of this world better than the hereafter, and Allah will not guide those who reject faith. Those who are they whose hearts, ears, and eyes Allah has sealed up, and they take no heed. Without doubt, in the hereafter they will perish. But verily, thy Lord, to those who leave their homes and after trials and persecutions, and who thereafter strive and fight for the faith and patiently persevere, thy Lord, after all, is all forgiving, most merciful. One day every soul will come up struggling for itself, and every soul will be recompensed fully for all its actions, and none will be unjustly dealt with. Allah sets forth a parable: a city enjoying security and quiet, abundantly supplied with sustenance from every place, yet was it ungrateful for the favors of Allah, so Allah made it taste of hunger and terror in extremes, closing in on it like a garment from every side, because of the evil which its people wrought. And there came to them a messenger from amongst themselves, but they falsely rejected him, so the wrath seized them even in the midst of their iniquities. So eat of the sustenance which Allah has provided for you, lawful and benevolent, and be grateful for the favors of Allah, if it is Allah whom ye serve. Allah has only forbidden you dead meat and blood, and the flesh of swine, and any food over which the name of other than Allah has been invoked. But if one is forced by necessity without willful disobedience, nor transgressing due limits, then Allah is all forgiving, most merciful. But say not for any false thing that your tongues may put forth, this is lawful, and this is forbidden, so as to ascribe false things to Allah. For those who ascribe false things to Allah will never prosper. And such falsehood is but a paltry gain, but they will have a most grievous penalty. To the Jews we prohibited such things as we have mentioned to thee before. We did them no wrong, but they were used to doing wrong to themselves. But verily thy Lord, to those who do wrong in ignorance, but who thereafter repent and make amends, thy Lord, after all this, is all forgiving, most merciful. Abraham was indeed a model, devoutly obedient to Allah and true in faith, and he joined not deities with Allah. Allah showed his gratitude for the favors of Allah, who chose him and guided him to a straight way. And we gave him benevolence in this world, and he will be in the hereafter in the ranks of the righteous. So we have taught thee the inspired message: follow the ways of Abraham, the true in faith, and he joined not deities with Allah. Shabbat was only made strict for those who disagreed as to its observance, but Allah will judge between them on the day of judgment as to their differences. Invite all to the way that thy Lord with wisdom and beautiful preaching, and argue with them in ways that are best and most generous. For thy Lord knoweth best who have strayed from Allah's path and who receive guidance. And if ye do catch them out no worse than they catch you out. But if ye show patience, that is indeed the best course for those who are patient. And do thou be patient, for thy patience is but from Allah. Nor grieve over them, and distress not thyself because of their plots. For Allah is with those who restrain themselves, and those who do benevolence. Sri Guru Granth Sahib, verse 27. If our hands, feet, and body are soiled, we can cleanse them by washing with water. If our cloth is polluted with urine or feces, we can cleanse it by washing with soap. Similarly, if our intellect is filled with sins, that is purified with love for Vaheguru's Nam. These sins and virtues are not just words for saying. Whatever deeds you do in this world, you will take their record along with your soul, and your future will be determined on the basis of your past deeds. As you sow, so shall you reap. O Nanak, this is how Vaheguru's command. This is how in Vaheguru's command you come and go continuously in and out of this world. Even if one obtains glory by visiting holy places, doing penances, or performing acts of compassion and charity, it is as negligible as a sesame seed. The person who has listened and believed in God, in Vaheguru's Nam, and that person's mind has developed love for Vaheguru, such a person has sanctified him or herself by bathing in the holy places of his or her inner self, and has truly removed the soil of sins. O Vaheguru, all the merits in me are your gifts. On my own, I have no virtue. Without your bestowing these qualities, I cannot worship you. O Vaheguru, I hail victory to you. You yourself are Maya, yourself the Word, yourself Brahma. You are eternally beauteous, and your mind always remains in ecstasy. What could be the time and occasion? What could be the lunar or solar day? What could be the season or the month when this universe was created? Even if they study the writings of their holy books, the Puranas, the Pundits do not know the time when the earth was created, nor Qazis know this date. Even if they write essays in Quran, neither any yogi nor any other person knows the lunar or solar day, season, or month in which this universe was created. Only the Creator who formed this world knows this mystery. How can I describe Vaheguru's greatness? How can I praise Vaheguru? How can I know Vaheguru? Nanak says, all others say, even one thinks him or her wiser than the others. The fact is that Vaheguru is the supreme Vaheguru, and supreme is Vaheguru's name. Whatever happens is in accordance with Vaheguru's will. O Nanak, if any egoist claims to know all about Vaheguru or Vaheguru's creation, that person would not find favor with Vaheguru in the world hereafter, and would be put to shame for making such false claims. There are millions and millions of nether regions, one below the other, and millions of skies, one above the other. The Vedas say that the scholars have exhausted themselves trying to find their final limits, but they were unsuccessful. The Semitic books, the Quran, Bible, Injil, and the Torah all tell that there are 18,000 universes with a singular root in the one Vaheguru. But the truth is that there is no end or limit to these universes. Their account could only be written if there was any account, because ultimately all accounts get destroyed, because there is no number which could be attributed to these worlds. O Nanak, Vaheguru, who is called the greatest of the great, only Vaheguru by Vaheguru's self knows the count of universes Vaheguru created. Even the persons who praise Vaheguru do not know how great Vaheguru is. They are like the streams and rivers which ultimately merge into the ocean, but cannot know the extent or the limit of that ocean. In the eyes of Vaheguru, the kings whose dominions may be vast like the ocean, and who may have mountains of wealth, are not equal to even a small ant, if in its mind that ant does not forget Vaheguru. There is no limit to Vaheguru's praises, and no limit to the people praising Vaheguru. Limitless are the deeds and gifts of Vaheguru. We cannot know Vaheguru's limitations by looking at Vaheguru's nature or by listening to the language that describes Vaheguru. We cannot guess the boundaries or the mysteries of Vaheguru's mind. It is impossible to guess the extent of Vaheguru's creation. Many try their utmost to assess the limits of Vaheguru, but still they cannot find those limits. Though we speak increasingly of Vaheguru, Vaheguru appears further often than we are able to describe. The truth is that Vaheguru is the supreme master. Vaheguru's abode is the highest. Higher than the highest is Vaheguru's Nam. Only if one were comparably high in rank and merit could one Could that one know about the supreme Vaheguru? Only Vaheguru by Vaheguru's self knows how great Vaheguru is. O Nanak, it is only by Vaheguru's grace that one obtains the gift of realizing Vaheguru's limitlessness. Vaheguru bestows so many gifts that we cannot describe them. Further, in spite of Vaheguru's many gifts, Vaheguru has no greed or expectation of return. But we as human beings always expect so much in return, even for the smallest favors done to others. Vaheguru is so great that countless brave warriors beg at Vaheguru's door. There are many who, after receiving gifts from Vaheguru, indulge in vices and ultimately perish. Many are those who keep receiving gifts but deny having received these by never thanking Vaheguru. Then there are the fools who simply keep consuming Vaheguru's gifts with no acknowledgement of the giver. However, there are some who are always suffering from disease and hunger but perceive even the suffering as Vaheguru's grace, because many times it is the suffering which makes us remember Vaheguru. But salvation from our sufferings and release from the cycle of births and deaths is obtained only in accordance with Vaheguru's will. If a foolish person tries to suggest any other way of salvation, that person alone will know how much punishment he or she suffers. Vaheguru by Vaheguru's self knows everything, and Vaheguru by Vaheguru's self gives everything. Yet only a few acknowledge this fact. However, the person whom Vaheguru grants the gift of uttering Vaheguru's praise is the King of all kings. Priceless are the merits of Vaheguru, and priceless is the exchange of these virtues. Priceless are those who meditate on Vaheguru's Nam, and priceless are the stores of Vaheguru's virtues. Priceless are those who come to this world and depart after gathering these virtues. Priceless are those who are imbued with Vaheguru's love, and priceless are those who are merged with Vaheguru through meditation. Priceless is the law and justice of Vaheguru. Priceless are the scales and weights, Vaheguru's criteria for judgment. And priceless is Vaheguru's grace and the mark of Vaheguru's grace. Yet beyond any concept of price is Vaheguru's mercy and command. Though Vaheguru is described as priceless, Vaheguru is beyond value in that Vaheguru is beyond description. There are those who read the Vedas and Puranas, and after reading they deliver lectures and try to describe Vaheguru's merits. Even many angels like Brahma, Indra, and Krishna try to assess Vaheguru's value. So also do celestials such as Shiva, many adepts, enlightened ones, demons, angels, devas, and silent devotees try to describe Vaheguru. Many have tried to assess Vaheguru's value and departed from this world without completing the task. Even if Vaheguru were to send as many further persons as have already tried, still they would not be able to describe Vaheguru's merits or Vaheguru's greatness. O Nanak, it is only the eternal Vaheguru by Vaheguru's self who knows how great Vaheguru is, because Vaheguru can become as great as Vaheguru wishes. If some living being claims the ability to describe Vaheguru, that person's name should be written at the top of the list of greatest fools. O Vaheguru, how wonderful must be that place, the mansion in which you sit, caring for all your creation. In this wonderful creation of yours, O Vaheguru, I wonder how myriad might be the instruments and their tunes, the number of players of those instruments and singers who are singing your praises in myriad musical measures. O Vaheguru, it appears to me that even air, water, and fire are singing your praises. The judge of righteousness who delivers justice on the basis of our deeds, recorded by angels, Chitra and Gupta, our conscious and subconscious faculties, is also singing your praises at your door. O Vaheguru, Shiva, Brahma, and Parvati, who have been embellished by you, sing your praises also while sitting on their thrones with other celestial beings. Many Indriyas, the celestials of rain, sing your praises, O Vaheguru. Sages in their meditative trance, saints during their reflections, men of discipline, charity, and contentment, and brave warriors are all singing your praises. The scholars and sages who reflect on Vedas for ages upon ages sing your praise. The heart-captivating women, the most handsome men, and the residents of heaven, earth, and the nether worlds sing your praise. The jewels created by you, along with the 68 most sacred places of pilgrimages, are singing your praises. The brave warriors are singing your praise. The creatures created through all the four sources of creation are singing of you. In fact, in a way, whilst moving and working in accordance with your will, all the continents, galaxies, and the solar systems created and supported by you are singing your praises. However, only those who are pleasing to you and who are truly devoted and imbued with your love sing your praise. There may be myriad others who sing of you which are not coming into my mind. How can poor Nanak think about all those who sing your praise? Eternal is Vaheguru, and eternal is Vaheguru's Nam, at whose door so many sing Vaheguru's praises. Vaheguru, who has created this universe, is present now. Vaheguru will always be present, and Vaheguru will not depart even when the rest of Vaheguru's creation departs. Vaheguru, who created Maya, the worldly illusion, in many colors and kinds, beholds Vaheguru's creation as suits Vaheguru's grandeur. Vaheguru does what Vaheguru does what pleases Vaheguru. In short, Vaheguru is the sovereign of sovereigns. O Nanak, the best thing for us is to live according to Vaheguru's will. Alhamdulillah, Ar-Rahmani Ar-Rahim. Allah Wabham. Dao Kadao Fei Chong Dao Ming Kaming Fei Chong Ming Ja Rastafari. Deus nos de quies en chela santo fakita nomentum Vaheguru Sanam. Baruchata Elohim Eloheinu melech halam. Ashikatzana bamizot avitzivan l'sokber v'aytorah. Amen. Baruchata Elohim Eloheinu melech halam barei puriyagafim. Amen. Kyrie eleison, sivamas tu sabrikatahi, sabe sata bavantu sukitatam, fagabiyam, aquaba upendo na amarim, fikiri na salami, chinta dam per me, libov mem, umenjagan, buntu shubana fakitgan. Shishem, kamosunina domo argato, peluma yelo logato, katoka lokshangun, gomanagan. God, we thank you for all your blessings. Atajiyami yatafanami, madom, ahu, om shanti, 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 amen. Namaste, assalamu alaikum, shalom. Mir, Satnam, Jai Jinendra. Jai Jin, adios, Che Taklis. Metta Samadhi. Eshwaso. Agabeki Irini. Esempe na asmuje, Kira Ufred, one love, peace, happiness, liberation. All thanks and praise to the Most High, Elohim Jah Rastafari.